Hey, what are you doing? How are you? Look at you and your face. It's a good face. You ought to take it to Faceland, where they take your face and they put it on a ceiling fan, and then they spin it, and when it comes down, you get a different face, and you put it on, and you can walk around the Faceland with a different face. It's really early. Hey, my name is Nick Digilio. Thank you for checking out my YouTube channel. Over 150 videos here. Scroll down. They date back months and months and months, and they're funny stories and jokes and reviews of movies. Lots of reviews of movies, and talks about music and all kinds of fun stuff and books, and it's just cool. Check it out. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. It's free. Check me out on Patreon.com. That's what you should do immediately. Patreon.com/NickDShow. You donate some dough. You pick a tier, and you make a monthly donation of $3, $5, $26, $25, whatever you want. $3. What is it? What is that? That's a Hershey bar and a chocolate milk for your child. You can afford that. Your child doesn't need that. It's gonna make them all hopped up on go-go juice. So throw the $3 my way. It helps out. It helps other people on Patreon to keep their art, their music, their stories, their videos going. And I'm on Patreon, so you should donate. Please donate today. It helps a ton. You have no idea how much it helps. So please help out. Be a cool person. Donate today. Patreon.com/NickDShow. Hey, my podcast. Man, a lot of people listen to my podcast. Thank you. It's awesome. Lots of subscribers. It is the Nick D Podcast at the Radio Misfits Podcast Network, radiomisfits.com. Every Tuesday, every Friday, each week, brand new podcast with great interviews and movie reviews and all pop culture stuff. And my partner Esmeralda Leon is on with me all the time. And we have really great guests all over the entertainment world and all over just the world in general. And it's really a lot of fun. We try to keep it light and fun. It's really cool. So radiomisfits.com. All right. My friends over at the Music Box Theater, which is probably the best movie theater in the country, and we happen to have it right here, smack dab in the city, in the Lakeview area. I refuse to call it Wrigleyville because it's a made-up neighborhood that doesn't exist, and fuck you. But it's in the Lakeview neighborhood. I grew up just blocks away from the place, and over the years, it's gone through a lot of changes, and for many, many years now, it's been an incredible revival house that shows older movies, that shows independent film, and foreign pictures, and all kinds of really cool stuff. It is an independent film beautiful mecca. It's a beautiful theater, and they do really wonderful programs there. The Chicago Critics Film Festival was there just recently. They do the 24-hour horror-thon over there with the Music Box of horrors, and they have special events and special movies that they show. It's just the best, and it's run by people that really care, and they know what they're doing, and they care about cinema, and they care about movies, they care about your experience. It's wonderful. I know many of the people that work there and the managers and all kinds of stuff. My buddy Steve Procopi, who reviews movies with me on my podcast, he is the PR guy there, and also works there. And I love the place. I've loved the place ever since I was a kid, and to be friends with and know the people that run it now, and be so connected to it, it's wonderful. So if you're a cinema fan, if you love movies, you should love the Music Box, and you should, if you've not been there, or if you haven't been there in a long time, get to the Music Box. This week especially, and into the end of the month, next week and a half or so, is the 70mm Film Festival. The 70mm Film Festival is when they bring in the giant 70mm screen. They cover up the regular beautiful movie screen that they have in there already, in the auditorium. They cover it up with this big giant movie screen that is capable of taking the image from 70mm, which is the size of the film that the movies are either shot on or blown up to, or presented in. They are presented in that, because the image is so big and it's so incredibly beautiful and overpowering that they need a big movie screen. So every year they bring in this giant movie screen, they install it for a little over 2-week time for the 70mm Film Fest, where they show a bunch of big, beautiful movies, most of which are epic and are required to see on the big screen. You can't watch this shit at home on your TV or your tablet or your phone. Unacceptable. I think that's the case of every movie, though. I think every movie should be seen on the big screen. But anyway, the 70mm Festival, it happens every year, and they get incredible titles that they show every year that need to be seen on the big screen. Some of these are the first time, some are the first time ever on 70mm. Some are classic, big, beautiful movies that need to be seen on 70mm. And so you go there and you sit in this beautiful historical auditorium and you watch these incredible, big, giant movies, CinemaScope, Cinerama movies that were, meant to be seen on the big screen. You see them beautifully projected by pros who know what they're doing on film, for God's sake. It's not digital, it's film in the beautiful 70mm theater on the big screen. This year, they're showing stuff like 2001: A Space Odyssey, classic stuff, West Side Story, Hello, Dolly, Lawrence of Arabia on the big screen. Some of these huge classics and some other ones that have been blown up to 35mm. They showed John Carpenter's Starman. Saw it over the weekend. Never saw it in 35 or never saw it in 70mm before. Amazing, beautiful print. Unbelievable. They showed Spartacus is another one that they've been showing. These are big, bold, beautiful movies that need to be seen on the big screen. And every year you get this chance. Like last year, they're showing The Dark Crystal. The Jim Henson Muppets Extravaganza. They're showing Flatliners. Not sure why, because it's a piece of shit. But it's shot here in Chicago. Joel Schumacher directed it. Julia Roberts. First time being shown in 70mm. And they're showing other stuff, like coming up is Walter Hill's Geronimo, which is a little scene Walter Hill. I mean, Walter Hill is one of the greatest directors of all time, ever. Directed Hard Times, directed The Driver, The Warriors, 48 Hours, Southern Comfort, Streets of Fire, Wild Bill, The Long Riders. I could go on and on and on with what a genius Walter Hill is, and he's directed so many incredible movies. Geronimo is one of his most underseen and underrated movies from 1993 with Robert Duvall, Gene Hackman, and Jason Patric, and Wes Studi as Geronimo. An incredible Western seen on the big screen, 70mm for the first time. That's coming up at the end of this week. And that would be June 22nd, 21st, 22nd. Check the calendar. MusicBoxTheater.com. MusicBoxTheater.com. Incredible stuff they're showing. Yesterday, over the past week, I've gone a couple of times, and yesterday I went to go see Spartacus in its full, the long, like almost 3.5-hour version with the beautiful intermission and the orchestral like the overture at the beginning with the lights out and just the music playing and all that stuff. And it was great, beautifully put together. The print is in beautiful shape. And then they showed, for the first time ever anywhere to the public, the Music Box had the world premiere ever, first time ever shown to the public, a 70mm print of the classic granddaddy of them all, Airport, with Burt Lancaster and Dean Martin and Gene Seberg and Van Heflin, Maureen Stapleton, Jacqueline Bisset. It's the very first, the granddaddy of the big 70s disaster movies with your all-star casts and with the disaster. It's based on Arthur Haley's famous book. And it was a monster hit at the box office. And it was great to see on the big screen. And the theater was filled with people who would clearly, I would say 95% of the people in the theater had either never seen the movie before and certainly had never seen it on the big screen and definitely had never seen it in 70mm. In fact, 100% of the people had never seen it in 70mm because it was a world premiere of that 70mm print. And it was a blast. It's not a great movie by any stretch of the imagination. It's a pretty silly film. It's certainly dated in spots. The movie came out in 1970, so there's a lot of late smoking everywhere. People who light up on the planes in the movie. They're lighting up, drinking booze out of glass, out of glasses made of glass, and smoking a ton on the planes. Everybody's cheating on everybody. All the main guys, like the Burt Lancaster and Dean Martin. Burt Lancaster plays the guy who runs the airport, and Dean Martin plays his best pilot. And they're both fucking around on their wives, with younger, hotter women, and don't care about their marriages or their kids. It's just hilarious. So all of the stuff that you expect in the disaster movie, this movie, the original Airport, laid the groundwork for. And it was fun to watch, and there were inadvertently hilarious things in it because the movie's dated because it was shot in late 1969, came out in 1970. So all of that stuff that everybody was going through socially was on display in the movie. So it was a lot of fun. And Helen Hayes won the Academy Award inexplicably for playing a cute little old lady who liked to sneak onto airplanes. And it's just it was great fun. And that's another great thing about this 70mm festival is it's a blast to see these movies, some of which have never been seen in 70mm before, on the beautiful, big, giant screen, the way movies are meant to be seen, with beautiful, loud, beautiful, tracked sound. It's just great. So it was great watching it with a big crowd. There were like 200 people in the theater. Probably the most people in one gathering to watch the movie Airport, maybe in 50 years. Easy. So it was a blast. But it's the granddaddy of all disaster movies. And so I thought I'd go down the list of great disaster movies. Now, disaster movies were big in the 70s. And I happen to love stupid-ass disaster movies. None of them are very good. I'm trying to think if there's, like, one legitimately good film, like, legitimately good, that is a disaster movie that would fall under that category. And I can't think if there's anything like really good. Maybe we'll come across. But they were huge in the 70s. And Airport, which came out in 1970, that entire decade of the 70s, huge for the disaster movie genre. And it became like a sub-genre, millions and millions of dollars. These movies, people loved going to disaster flicks. All started with Airport. Now, it's not like disaster movies don't exist now, because they do, and they have, pretty much consistently. They got popular again in the late 90s. Assholes like Roland Emmerich, he's another jagoff who makes some of the worst movies ever. He's like the master of the modern day disaster movies, and his movies suck, like Independence Day, and that last one, Moon Crash or Moon Village or whatever the fuck it was called. He did 2012. If Roland Emmerich made a movie, most likely the White House blew up in it. And there have been other filmmakers who do that. So the disaster movie genre is still around. But in the 70s, those were the quintessential, the classic, the awesome, star-studded disaster movies of the 70s, where big stars would have, like, cameos. Henry Fonda often played the president, and it would always be like, and Henry Fonda as the president. And it starred all like B-level, C-level, Z-level, A-level stars, all crammed together with their faces and headshots on the poster. Usually their heads were lined up on the bottom of the poster, like all the big stars. Here they are. And something happens, something blew up, there's an earthquake, there's a typhoon, a plane crash, something happens, and all the big stars gather together. Henry Fonda is their president, Charlton Heston is usually in them, the shit hits the fan, and it's disaster. And they were huge in the 70s, and it all got kicked off with Airport, which I believe you have one more viewing of at the Music Box. Check out musicboxtheater.com in 70. But here are some of the best 70s. Just sticking to the 70s, because that's the quintessential, the important, the awesome era of disaster movies. They all were released in the 70s. So here are some of the more memorable, awesome disaster movies of the 70s. The Towering Inferno. You can't, please. Paul Newman, Steve McQueen, everybody else on the planet. Towering Inferno, big giant high rise, grand opening, everybody's excited. A giant fire breaks out on like the 900th floor, and everybody tries to get out. Fantastic. And by the way, all of these movies also inspired satires and parodies of them. Obviously, Airplane is the biggest satire of the disaster movie thing. I mean, it's essentially, Airplane is essentially almost a frame-by-frame remake of a movie called 0 Hour, this little B movie from the late 50s, where people got food poisoning on the plane and all that stuff. Like, a ton of stuff. The plot from Airplane, the comedy, is taken almost verbatim from 0 Hour, and then a bunch of other disaster movie tropes are thrown in to make fun of. Not so much from Airport, the original Airport, but Airport 75. That's the big target that Airplane had. And so let's go to the Airport movies. Airport 75 was the second one. Airport 75 was with Charlton Heston. By the way, as I'm going through the titles of these 70s disaster movies, the name Charlton Heston will pop up like 10, 20, 80 times. Motherfucker was in he seemingly was in every 70s disaster movie of all. You're going to make a disaster movie, get Chuck Heston and his pants that are usually hiked up to here, and he'll sleep with every woman. I'm Chuck Heston. So it's Airport 75, Charlton Heston, Karen Black plays the stewardess. They hit a thing, the cockpit blows a hole in it that sucks out the pilots, so Karen Black has to be brought in to fly the plane, all right, to be taught how to fly the plane, which happens in Airplane. And then Chuck Heston is like brought in via helicopter and dropped into the hole of the plane to land it, to save the day. On the plane are who is Stephanie Zimbalist Jr., Ephraim Zimbalist is in it. Stephanie Zimbalist Jr. is in a different one. You've got Joseph Cotten, Olivia de Havilland is in it, and Myrna Loy, Sid Caesar is in it. But the big one was Helen Reddy played the singing nun. She was the nun who sang, and Linda Blair was the little girl that was going for the organ transplant. So she's like on a gurney with IVs hooked up, and Jill Whalen played her in Airplane, and Joyce Bulifant played the singing. Joyce Bulifant played her mom in it. But anyway, so Airport 75, classic. Airport 77, Jack Lemmon is your pilot. Christopher Lee is on that plane, and the plane crash is underwater. So in Airport 77, not only is it a plane crash, but you're underwater and you're all going to drown. And the best part of that is scuba diving Christopher Lee. That's Airport 77. Airport 79 is the Concorde, Airport 79. And they couldn't get like a lot of big stars, like Charo's in that one, Robert Wagner, Eddie Albert, John Davidson, Jimmy Walker. By that point in 1979, they were scraping the bottom. Alain Dion is the French star. He's like the main guy in it. But George Kennedy is in all the airport movies. George Kennedy, who's in the first Airport, people were going nuts over him. George Kennedy, hilarious, is the only guy who can fix any problem on any airplane, chomping on cigars, going, God damn it, I told him not to put that engine in that unit, that kind of shit. So George Kennedy is in all of them. But they're all ridiculous. Airport 75, 77, the Concorde, Airport 79, all classics. Towering Inferno, classic. Obviously, Earthquake, 1974, in Sense-Around. That's where they would crank up the volume and put in these giant bass speakers in the back of the auditorium, crank it up so loud that the theater would shake and it felt like you were in an earthquake. And, of course, it destroyed a lot of old theaters. Plaster would start falling down in people's popcorn. If it was a multiplex, you couldn't hear the movie you were watching because Earthquake was playing in the theater next door. And when the Sense-Around kicked in, your theater shook too. Ridiculous. So Earthquake, again, Heston is in that, all-star cast, ridiculous movie. I just remember the poster for Earthquake has the worst tagline. You know, like the taglines are, what's going to happen you're on a plane, oh no. But they always have to have like a slick tagline on a movie poster to kind of suck you in. The tagline for Earthquake was, an event. That was the tagline for Earthquake, an event. Ooh, can't wait to see that event. Earthquake, Sense-Around, ridiculous. Roller Coaster, another movie that was in Sense-Around where the whole theater shook. You know, ridiculous. Only an idiot, only a high, drunk asshole from the 70s would come up with an idea like Sense-Around. Hey, let's crank up the bass so loud that the theater shakes, plaster falls down, people have heart attacks. It'll feel like they're in an earthquake or they're riding a roller coaster. And Midway was another one that was in Sense-Around, and Battlestar Galactica. Those were the four movies that were in loud-ass, bass-thumping, stupid-ass Sense-Around, where it feels like you're in a movie theater shaking. Ridiculous. Roller Coaster, George Segal. Sparks, the band Sparks, in Roller Coaster, another one. Meteor is one of my favorites. Meteor was at the tail end of the 70s, 1979. Meteor was Sean Connery, Carl Malden, Natalie Wood, and it was about a giant meteor that was going to come down. I mean, look, Armageddon, that became Armageddon years later. Dumbass Michael Bay, another shithead who makes terrible modern-day disaster movies. But Meteor is hilarious. If you've not seen Meteor, Irwin Allen is the guy who he was the guy who trademarked the world of disaster movies. He either produced them all, he wrote some of them, directed a few of them. He directed Meteor. Meteor is a fucking horror. No, he didn't direct Meteor. Somebody else did. But he produced it. Irwin Allen was synonymous with the disaster movies of the 70s. If it had the name Irwin Allen on it, a disaster happened. So Meteor, classic. Carl Malden is particularly hilarious. So Meteor, classic. The Cassandra Crossing. Richard Harris is in that one. About a disease, a virus that has gone crazy on a train, and there's terrorists on the train. So it's a combined thing. There's like terrorism, bombs, and disease, and viruses, all on one train that's going from one place to another, and there might be a bomb on the train, and the train might crash, and all kinds of crazy shit. Richard Harris, O.J. Simpson, to help you. Not kill you, help you. Avalanche, Rock Hudson, Mia Farrow. Awful movie. From like 78, Avalanche. And it takes like forever for the... That's another thing that, by the way, I do want to mention this. It takes forever for in a lot of these disaster movies, it takes like forever for the disaster to actually happen. Like watching Airport last night, it takes like an hour before anything disaster-y happens. You know, you got to set up all the subplots. There's a lot of soap opera romance, like in Airport. Everybody's cheating on their wives in it, and they're all doing all kinds of things. You have to set up all of these stories, you know, these very soap opera-y, dramatic bullshit stories before the actual disaster happens. So if you really want to see the disaster happen, you got to sit through an hour of bullshit, and that's the case. By the way, when I was walking out of the movie last night at the Music Box 70mm presentation, there were two girls in their 20s who clearly had never seen the movie ever before. They weren't even born Hell, they weren't even born when Armageddon was made. So they're in the theater, and afterwards, like, I overheard them as I was walking out there having a conversation. One of them said to the other, why did those men all cheat on their wives? Because Burt Lancaster and Dean Martin are all fucking around on their wives, and they're both, like, wives that they have kids and all, you know, getting... So anyway, so the one girl says, why do they all cheat on their wives? And the other girl says, yeah, fuck them. And so that was the conversation. Oh, very quickly, at the screening for 2001, A Space Odyssey that I went to on Friday night, beautiful, incredible print, 70 millimeter. Definitely check it out. If you've not seen Kubrick's 2001 Space Odyssey, you should, at Music Box. And as I was walking, I was standing outside of the theater waiting for the next movie, which was Starman, John Carpenter's Starman. Standing outside, you know, and listening to people talking about 2001, and there was a group of 20-somethings who clearly never seen the movie, whatever. And they're having a conversation, and I hear them, and they're all like, whoa, and they're talking about it. And I'm just happy that anybody in their 20s would actually go to see a movie, first of all, a movie in the theater and not on their fucking phone, but they're actually in a theater. They're not only in a theater, but they're seeing it in 70 millimeter, and they're seeing a legendary movie like 2001: A Space Odyssey. It always makes me feel good until I hear them talking, until I hear the 20-somethings actually talking about the movie, and then I'm like, oh, God, we're all fucking doomed. But one of the guys said, and they were having the conversation, one of the guys said, let me tell you something, man. I don't know. That monkey shit just didn't make any fucking sense. That was the guy's thoughts. Like, after 2001, this 20-something guy said, I don't know, but that monkey shit didn't make any fucking sense. We're in good hands in the future. Okay, Flood was a TV movie with Robert Culp, Martin Milner, Adam 12, man. If you have a flood, you want to call Adam 12. Poseidon Adventure. Poseidon Adventure is one of the greatest of all time. Boat Flips Over, Gene Hackman, Jack Albertson, Shelley Winters, Red Buttons, Carol Lindley. It goes on and on and on. Leslie Nielsen, who is the captain of the boat, who would show up in an airplane. What can you say about Poseidon Adventure? Except that Beyond the Poseidon Adventure came out in 1979, which was with Michael Caine, Sally Field, Jack Warden. God, who else was in Beyond the Poseidon Adventure? But anyway, Telly Savalas. And it was the adventures of some other people that were also on the Poseidon, but it's such a big boat that they were on a different side. And Telly Savalas plays like a guy who plans a heist during it. And Michael Caine it's Beyond the Poseidon Adventure is probably the worst of all the disaster movies, and most of them suck. But without question, the funniest one ever is Beyond the Poseidon Adventure. Jack Warden plays a blind guy, and Shirley Knight plays his wife. And as they're going through the overturned ship, Michael Caine leading the way with Sally Field behind him, and they play lovers, I think, or some bullshit. And they come across like Jack Lemmon, who's blind, and Shirley Knight plays his wife, and they're like, "Come with us, we'll get you out of here." And Jack Warden is sitting there. He's like, "I can't." And they're like, "Why? Why can't you?" And he's like, "You see." And then he takes a pair of sunglasses. He's sitting there without anything on his face, just his face. He goes, "And I can't go. You see." And he takes a pair of sunglasses and he puts them on. And he goes, "I'm blind." Because you wouldn't know the guy was blind, but you put sunglasses on. Well, clearly you're blind. If you're putting sunglasses on, you're blind. You see, I'm blind. Beyond the Poseidon Adventure. Lots of screaming, lots of bullshit. Hilarious movie. Let me fly through some of these other ones. Beyond the Poseidon Adventure. The Swarm is probably the stupidest and maybe the worst, but also unbelievably hilarious. And The Swarm is with Michael Caine again is the lead in The Swarm. Richard Widmark as the general. Get him out of here! He does a lot of screaming. Richard Widmark. Catherine Ross, Lee Grant, Richard Chamberlain, Patty Duke, Bradford Dillman, Fred McMurray, Slim Pickens. These are the kind of stars that you would have in these dumbass movies. And then Henry Fonda as the president. All these second level is hilarious. But The Swarm is about killer bees, because in the 70s, killer bee movies were big. There was the Terror from Above, there was Savage Bees, there was The Bees, and The Swarm was the big budget, big star, Irwin Allen epic. The Swarm is fucking hilarious. If you've never seen it, you should. Killer Bees, that's the disaster. It is a riot. It is hilarious, particularly Richard Widmark. Hilarious. And then there is 2 Minute Warning about a sniper at a football game. There is Black Sunday, where the Goodyear blimp crashes into the football stadium. There is Hurricane with Mia Farrow and Jason Robards, where again, it takes like an hour and a half for the hurricane to actually happen. And then there is the Savage Bees, which is another bee movie. Skyjacked, Charlton Heston. Again, Charlton Heston is in, like I said, half of these titles Charlton Heston is in them. Skyjacked is with Charlton Heston, James Brolin, Yvette Mimieux, and Rosie Greer. It's about a crazed Vietnam vet who takes over a plane and hijacks it. Then there is a Gray Lady Down, which is a submarine movie, which means it's good because all submarine movies are good. Again, Charlton Heston is in that one. David Carradine, Stacy Keach, and that was a disaster submarine movie. The Hindenburg, George C. Scott, and a host of stars. Lots of soap operas in that. And it takes forever for the Hindenburg to hit the thing and blow up, and oh, the tragedy. Terrible movie. Juggernaut, on a giant cruise ship, a giant ship filled with people. Richard Harris, again, is in Juggernaut. Omar Sharif, Anthony Hopkins. Again, someone has placed a series of bombs on this giant boat. Juggernaut. So these are the kind of movies that we saw in the 70s. So when people weren't getting high and sleeping with their next door neighbors and drinking Yago sangria, smoking cigarettes in hospitals, and ignoring their kids and allowing them to go out and get hurt, who gives a fuck? It's the 70s. Or in my case, having your kid get bit by a dog and then sewn up by a drunk nurse. That's the case. But when they weren't doing that, they were going to see disaster movies. Most of them starred Charlton Heston. Almost all of them were made by Irwin Allen. And the granddaddy of them all is playing in a 70mm presentation with a spectacular, beautiful print at the Music Box. So if you want to see the beginning of all of it on the big screen, you should. Enormously entertaining. The original Airport is at the Music Box Theater as part of their 70mm film festival. Full schedule at musicboxtheater.com. They're doing a great job. Amazing projectionists, amazing people putting it together, and incredible big screen movies the way they're meant to be seen in 70mm. So, disaster movies, they're out there. There's a ton of them. They keep making them. But the 70s, Irwin Allen, Charlton Heston, Richard Widmark, all of these B-level, O.J. Simpson stars and, Sid Caesar and shit, with Henry Ford as your president. An event. That's what Earthquake is. Check them all out. They're all available and they're all hilarious. Disaster movies from the 70s, beautiful. And it was great to see the granddaddy of them all in 70mm last night. So anyway, disaster movies rule. You should check them out. Ooh.